welcome there. So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Emer. I'd like to welcome you to our session on LinkedIn Learning and how we're growing it throughout the organisation. I'm Joyce Mclachlan, the People and Organisation Development Manager, and I've been in UCD for over 10 years now, in this role for the past 2.5 years. And I'm passionate about lifelong learning and supporting our individual development journeys in the university, and in particular how we retain and apply learning through our work. So I'm just going to share my my screen, and I am going to put it there from the outset that, you know, we are today looking for people to get involved with us. This for us is the start of a conversation with you. So I hope that's sharing. Is that okay? Okay, thanks. So this is the start of a conversation between my team and people development and anybody in the organisation who would like to talk to us about curating content for your own team. And if you're interested in becoming a LinkedIn Learning curator for your school, unit or team, we can start that conversation straight after this session. So we have a great panel of guests today, including our LinkedIn Learning partner and 2 colleagues, each with their own experience and their own LinkedIn journey. And they're going to talk us through what has worked for them and how the functionality in LinkedIn Learning has not only improved engagement with the platform, but has also impacted on their learners too. So I'll just introduce the panel. We have Sarah Jones, and Sarah is UCD's education partner at LinkedIn Learning. And Sarah partners with institutions across Ireland and the UK to help staff, faculty and students gain access to future-ready skills and competencies through LinkedIn Learning. Then we have Licia Carlesi from our UCD staff. And Licia joined UCD in 2015 and has been working with the EDI, the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion Unit, for the last 3 years. And Licia is a content curator for the EDI team. And she's going to talk us through some of her experiences of creating content. And then finally, we have Louise Power. Delighted that Louise is joining us from Trinity College. And she's worked in the university sector for, well, I say it, Louise, 35 years across student-facing roles and central administration and infrastructure roles also. And 22 of those years have been in HR. And Louise is currently the Learning and Development Manager in Trinity and has a background in employee relations. And Louise believes that the power of learning and development is really strong, particularly in micro-learning, and how it can fundamentally change us as individuals at different stages in our career and throughout our life. So more to come on that and how LinkedIn Learning has been used, again, widely across Trinity. They're a little bit more advanced than we are in relation to the embedding of it. They've got it for over 2 years, whereas we're only in our first 6 months of LinkedIn Learning in UCD. So more about that anon. So to start, I just wanted to give you a sense of why we partnered with LinkedIn Learning, and which actually was in the planning earlier. Before recent events, we were going to move to e-learning, an e-learning platform. And of course, now we're in the situation where it's something that we're relying upon in conjunction with our facilitator-led training. And some of you may be aware that LinkedIn itself as an organization works with world leaders, governments, institutions and companies to analyze labour market data and prepare the global workforce for jobs of the future. And in particular, how it links back in with LinkedIn Learning is that they identify emergent competencies and trends. And this ability to use intelligence to inform future learning on a real-time basis, and the content for that is one of the enduring benefits of the investment in this particular platform. So that was I suppose, one of the key drivers in us moving towards LinkedIn Learning. And we wanted to engage with an e-learning partner because we recognise that the default traditional format of training and formal training is really only one way in which we learn, and the appreciation that different people have different styles of learning, people learn in different ways. So the story so far, it's short but perfectly formed, I'd say. We launched LinkedIn and UCD in October, on the 23rd of October. Or 22nd, and it was to provide a source of learning that is accessible, with content that's relevant to you when you need it and in the flow of work. So we want people to get into the habit of learning as they need it. And this has enhanced our portfolio with greater learner experience, broader selection of topics, and of course it goes beyond your traditional HR topics into IT and well-being and many other areas that would be beyond the reach of what we could do in any given programme. And I'm sure that you can understand for development function here, training at scale is a key deliverable. And it's important that, that we ensure content is not only relevant because it has to be something that will speak to its audience, but also the impact of that learning can be much more impactful when it's relevant to the user. So if we look beyond just even the people and organization development strategy, and we think about overlaying the digital transformation strategy at the university level, where we aim to embed digital technology in our learning and provide opportunities for employees to make use of digital technologies, we really felt that this would be a great addition and fit for our offering in people development. So a few stats there. In the last 5 months, over 1,200 UCD employees have activated their LinkedIn Learning accounts. And we have nearly 4,000 courses have been viewed by UCD employees in the last just over 4 months, actually, it's under 5 months. In addition, this has also increased development options for staff working in locations outside of our main Belfield campus. Now, I think most of us are outside of the campus, but it will be an enduring benefit into the future for those who are engaged maybe in transnational education and those who are based in other sites as well. So from our perspective, the focus continues for the coming academic year to build out this blended learning offering where learners can control their own time and pace and place of learning, and then in conjunction with our facilitator-led training, which you might be familiar with from our course catalogue. So, as I mentioned there, driven by your circumstance, the way in which we learn has changed, and in a workplace where we expect more people to be working remotely after COVID, you know, the capacity to refresh yourself on a topic and also to self-direct to opportunities is really important to us. And so a question that you might ask a colleague across the room around on Excel or something like that, you can now go into, you know, and look at a 3-minute video or something like that, that you can find it something for yourself. And again, there's a new experience if you're going to be doing a presentation or something like that you haven't done in the past on Zoom, that you might want to go in and look at something in LinkedIn Learning. Again, that would be a starting point from which to progress. Okay. So brings me right back to my starting point, which is what can you do? How can you help and your team and what can you do as a LinkedIn Learning curator? Now, Leach is going to bring us through some of the experience that she's had as a curator. But when we launched LinkedIn originally back in October, we engaged with many internal training providers across UCD. You can see some of them here. And many of them now have resources specific to their own core training delivery that they wrap around LinkedIn, around those core delivery offerings. So if you're doing a course in IT services, you might do a pre-work course on something on Excel before you go into the facilitator-led training. So it enhances and also becomes not only a single point of learning itself, but it can also bring a number of people up to a certain level before they go onto a course, and that's really good as well. So that's what we do with our internal providers, but there's also an opportunity for you as curators to do something maybe on a team level or a unit level that you might want to do for your own area and to create something for that particular development need. So what I want to do now is grow that footprint, and I really do want to grow the footprint of employees who can curate content, build the reach of LinkedIn in schools and units, and develop homegrown learning paths that are relevant, particularly to your own development requirement in your own area. And as I said, this can assist with either the development of a group of employees who can undertake training together and benefit from common language and common concepts going into something as a base level. So all this then links back into development planning, P4G development planning, where a school or unit can deploy maybe a planned development strategy that they might have within their unit, that they're going to get everybody up to a certain level across their team during this academic year or whatever it is. So I think as you're doing this, or as you want to, if you want to engage with curation, I think about how you learn and how you've learned in the past. And that training, albeit face-to-face or live virtual, is really only one option, and that there's so many other options out there, and this is one of them. And we want to encourage people to be practical about their learning and really start to think about development as something that can happen in your job, that we can all participate in, and we can do it as a team, and people can, as I said, curate learning pathways for the team at that local level, which is really important. So the functionality itself is very straightforward to use, and I know that Sarah might just give us a very quick overview of that. But I suppose, just to wrap up on my area, if you do want to be a LinkedIn learner, LinkedIn Learning Curator, you can contact people development at gcd.ie, and we can start straight away. As you can imagine, it's going to be a LinkedIn Learning video that will give you the curation instruction, and it's only 6 minutes long, so it's very straightforward to do it. So that's all I wanted to say. We do want to set in motion this pulse to try and get some more people involved in it. So please do get in touch with us at People Development. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to stop my sharing here for a minute. And I now want to invite Sarah Jones. Sarah, are you there? Yeah, great. To give us some insights on maybe the emergent skills and reskilling that's prevalent now in our work, Sarah. And also how the curator role is a powerful function within the LinkedIn Learning platform. So over to you, Sarah.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Joyce, for having me, and hi UCD community. Good to be here with you all. If you just give me one moment, I'm going to actually pause my video. I've had some bandwidth issues today, and we'll present from here. Okay, so kind of as Joyce sort of teed up, I am a client partner at LinkedIn, so I work with universities across Ireland and across the UK. And what I'll be doing over the next couple of minutes is just taking you through some of the data and insights that's really driving the urgency for all of us to feel empowered to be engaged in learning, engaged in this with our teams, in our program areas, for ourselves and for our colleagues, because it is of absolute urgency, and it's so paramount now more than ever that we are all engaged in this process. This isn't something that's left to one team within the organization, but it is something that counts on everyone. And I think that the call to action to today with empowering you and your teams to be curators is the perfect kind of forward momentum that we can be leaning into. So first, I'll be taking you through some of the research, and then exactly how UCD can be at the forefront of that. One moment. So as you can imagine, and I know as Joyce kind of set this up, LinkedIn has access to just a phenomenal repository of data and insights on the global workforce through the LinkedIn.com platform. So we would be collaborating with the World Economic Forum and other public policy organizations to share insights on these real-time changes in the global economy. So prior to COVID-19, digital transformation and just the increase in automation and AI had started to significantly impact our workplaces. But the pandemic just increased the velocity of this process overnight, with institutions and businesses having to pivot and obviously transform your operations. So as a result, the degree of AI and automation that's just been accelerated has increased just massive skill shortages across Europe. So the World Economic Forum estimate that 40% of all current employees will need upskilling and reskilling as a result of this dramatic change in just a period of less than 3 years. And also a few months ago, McKinsey released their Future of Work in Europe report, and they estimated that in the short term, there were about 59 million jobs at risk from COVID. And when you combine that with jobs that are at significant risk because of automation, that represents a total of 86 million jobs across the European economy. So the types of roles that are most at risk for automation would be things like predictable or repetitive work, machine operation, data processing. But it's funny because it's not all doom and gloom with these big, large numbers, because technology, while it does replace and automate some jobs, it's actually creating massive amounts of new work in industries and in education that we couldn't have even imagined. And so it's funny when you look at another McKinsey study from actually their Paris office, they found the internet had destroyed 500,000 jobs in France in the previous 15 years. But at the same time, it created 1.2 million others. So that was a net addition of 700,000 jobs. So the World Economic Forum estimate that essentially 97 million roles will be created as a result of digital transformation of our businesses over the next few years. So it creates an opportunity and a challenge for higher ed institutions to basically anticipate these emerging skills and prepare for this rapidly changing world of work. You know, what will our universities look like in the next few years? What are those skills that we all need to be developing? So if I just kind of progress forward, it's quite interesting. We did a study, we just released last Tuesday actually, where we did a study with learning and development leaders just around the world that looked at what is their top priority. And year on year, we've seen a massive increase in everyone's focus on the number one, which is upskilling and reskilling. So I had a 15% increase just from June 2020 alone. And so every organization is focused on bringing staff along and bringing employees along on that journey of personal and professional transformation, because that's ultimately how we're going to have a very progressive, productive workplace. And so the World Economic Forum, in collaboration with LinkedIn, highlighted the 10 highest demand skills estimated for 2025. So as you can see here, a significant portion of these skills would be considered foundational or transferable skills, like you'll see communication, analytical thinking, creativity, influence. That's required across so many different roles at the university, and they're difficult to automate or replace with AI. And so, in order to future-proof our community and to be open to change, we need to make sure that every single staff member, professional staff member, academic, everyone is part of the university community is engaged in this process of learning these skills. And actually, you can look at this afterwards, because I'm sure this will be made available for everyone. But we also looked at, actually where on LinkedIn are people investing in terms of the skills just as a result of this past year. And on this list, you'll see huge emphasis on change management, on resilience, on working collaboratively in new and interesting ways. And it's fantastic that people have obviously been almost forced into this place of working in new ways, but it has put an emphasis on very new skills that some of us maybe haven't spent a lot of time investing in previously. And so I also wanted to make sure I drew attention to, recognizing that every single area within the university have their own unique dynamic skills that they'll have to be learning, whether it's kind of an incoming kind of new piece of technology or just new ways of working with one another. And so these are the top skills represented across a couple of the different functions globally in terms of those key skills. And I think that when we talk about Curator, we talk about our vision for what we want to do within UCD, we want to spark every single area and every single manager and every single program leader to reconsider, how are they developing themselves and their teams and bringing them on this journey, recognizing that you have very niche specific needs relevant to kind of your role in your professional area. I think the other thing that, when we focus on education, there are so many internal and external pressures facing education institutions today that are significant just to make sure that we spend a little bit of time discussing. And it's not just the fact that there's massive youth unemployment that's risen to 18% across Europe. It's not just this competitiveness for jobs. It's not just this massive reskilling we talked about for staff members. So obviously technology continues to evolve at this pace. And so there is that impact on the skill requirements for every organization. And within universities, we felt that very acutely. But it also means that there's a long tail effect on the student experience, on students being hired and being able to have specific skills if their experience within the university has been interrupted or not necessarily kind of as consistent or as rich as it could have been. And that means there's this massive amount of attention on how is it that everything that we're doing obviously translates into, student and staff experience. So what can we all be doing to consider the skills needed in the programs that we're running and the work that we're doing, that translates into a very consistent, strong experience for everyone, that everyone is emerging with the key skills that they need to have really fantastic programs. And I think the other thing that we've noticed, actually quite importantly as a result of the pandemic, is just the exacerbated challenges posed in inequality in terms of access to, equipment, high-speed internet, access to just a quiet place to work, financial supports with, varying different pressures. And so what does it mean to create equity when it comes to skill development, and to really lean in when people are struggling or trying to manage a number of different things on their time. And so there's obviously, it's not without its pressures, and we're aware of that. And yet in the face of that, it's so important more than ever that we are leaning into this skill development. And so, while we can't predict what skills will be needed beyond this immediate future, there's two critical focus areas that matter at this point. So the changing of environment created by digital transformation, AI, and automation calls for a change in how we think about learning. So people need to be learning in order to develop the abilities to gain new skills and adapt. There has to be that growth mindset. And so Alvin Toffler, he's credited with saying the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So that learning agility is really the ability and the skill that we need to be conditioning for lifelong learning across every staff member, to unlearn and relearn these critical skills. So if I just jump forward here, then what you'll see is when we are kind of polling leaders around the world and leading organizations, there's a couple of common themes, and this is exactly pronounced in what we're trying to do here in talking about Curator. It's involving people that know their teams and their organizations the best to drive learning and engagement and skill development within their areas. So the number one priority is involving people managers. It's using data and tools to identify what are those precise skills needed within the varying parts of the organization. It's helping employees, with that career path and that recognition of performance, to understand, okay, here's where I'm at and here's where I need to go. And therefore, here are the gaps and how I can bridge those gaps through learning and through other kind of resources. And I think that this is exactly feeding into the programs Joyce was describing earlier in terms of where you're taking LinkedIn Learning in terms of your P4G program. And if I just very briefly, because I know my time is almost up, but something I wanted to draw upon as we talk about Curator, which is essentially empowering each and every person to be authors of your own kind of learning path, to bring your colleagues and your peers and your teams along on that journey. It's the reason why we're so focused on that is because our data is telling us that it's way more impactful than anything else we could be doing. So we're putting so much focus on this. What we found is that, with a dramatic decrease of instructor-led training this year, we were curious in our report if community-based learning was having an impact on engagement. And so when we looked at the data from LinkedIn Learning, we found learners who use social features on average watch 30 times more hours of learning content. And we found that those employees who feel kind of a sense of belonging are 5.2 times more likely to be engaged. So this demonstrates a virtuous cycle of learning, belonging, and engagement when you can start to socialize learning, when you can start to empower the people on the ground with their teams to curate content, to use different social features. And LinkedIn Learning is a socialized learning environment. And so you can engage with the author, you can engage with one another, you can watch courses at the same time. But I think curation is what we're focused on right now for today's webinar, and rightly so. I'll just kind of last progress into, because this is all stats to say learning together, feeds back into kind of better equipped teams. But the last piece I wanted to just leave on are, well, what are those tactics? And there's about 10 that we've distilled it down to for driving absolute engagement from a learning and development perspective in terms of employees and staff really prioritizing learning. But there's 3 that I want to call out right now. So it's creating, number 1, and this is globally what every other organization is dead focused on, it's creating relevant learning paths through Curator. So tapping into these learning paths. You can use ones that people have already loved this year. Like we have some of our top ones available, like being productive at home, well-being, diversity, inclusion, leadership. But then also go ahead and create your own and get creative and feel empowered with that curator role. It's so straightforward and easy to do too. It's just a very simple, simple kind of tool within the platform. The other 2 are making learning social. So how do you build experiences in which your team can really feel like they're a part of it, that they have a voice? Maybe it's even setting aside time for you all to watch the same content or have a discussion afterwards. Reconsidering what does it mean to really engage in this process together, and then also getting closer to their needs. And I think that's what the P4D program will really reveal as well. You'll understand for each and every person what is their precise needs and how can you start to bridge that gap as part of that process. And so I'm so privileged to be working with UCD in this way, because you really are at the front of this. And it's clear because of the programs that you have now and coming up. So with that, I kind of said my piece. I'll hand it back over to Joyce.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Fantastic. We're going to move on now, just in the interest of time, to Alicia. And I'd like to invite Alicia. Now, Alicia has curated content for the EDI website, and she's also collected, I think, some learning paths and collections for them. So if you want to maybe just give us your take on that, Alicia, how you found it, and maybe give us an example of one that you would have done.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So my name is Alicia, and as Joyce said, I'm the content curator for LinkedIn Learning for the Equality, Diversity and Inclusion team in UCD. And you might know, I definitely see some familiar faces. You might know EDI is quite broad. It encompasses so many different areas and topics. And as part of our work in EDI, we support the EDI group, and the EDI group has a number of subgroups on different topics like LGBTI, disability, multicultural group, and so on. And we also support a number of networks, working groups, and panels. Like we have our parent body panel, and we have our dignity and respect contact persons panel, and also the mental health first aid panel. So when Joyce was talking to me about LinkedIn Learning last year, I kind of jumped at the chance to be able to develop some EDI related content. I just think it is a great resource to have. A lot of the content is already there. All you have to do is just bring it together into a collection or a learning path. And especially in EDI, it complements a lot of some of the topics that I was able to find. They complement the work that we do and the work that our groups and our panels do. Most of them actually are just volunteer. They volunteer to help us embed EDI. It's great to have those available for our groups as well, not only everyone else in UCD. I'll show you briefly just the 3 collections that I've created so far. Just looking for the EDI website. Yeah, here. I hope you can see it there. So at the moment, as a start, I did 3 collections, and one is called Diversity, Inclusion and Belonging for All. And this is the content that's included. And this is from the EDI website, but it links to LinkedIn Learning and all the videos and the content. Another one that I did was How to Engage Meaningfully in Allyship and Anti-Racism. And this is the content that's included. And the third one is Mental Wellbeing at Work During Times of Change and Uncertainty. So I'm happy to share the link after this or in the chat, but this was just to give you an idea of the collections that I created. And when I was putting them together, again, the content was there. It was just a matter of searching for it and tailoring it for our groups. And I was thinking of the UCD community, but also our panels, as I said, and our groups, because it's great for them even to be able to dig a little deeper and learn a little more about some of these topics. And the Race and Ethnic Equality Working Group is a fairly new group. It's been a few months now, but at the time when I was creating content for LinkedIn Learning, EDI-related content. We had just had a workshop with an academic from the UK who's an expert on the topic of race. And during that workshop, he had recommended allyship training as one of the topics. And as it happens, you know, LinkedIn Learning had a full learning path on allyship and anti-racism. So I thought that was great kind of synchronicity, and that was a great resource to have and to be able to refer the group to, even for themselves, and even, you know, for me as well. I've certainly used it as well. I also found the function very easy to use. I took a very quick training. It was, I think, half an hour, and then I talked to Joyce again just when I was kind of starting to play around with it a little bit, and I couldn't believe how easy it was, because it's so simple. You know, you can search for a topic and it's already there. All you have to do is just, you know, you can copy it, you can tailor it, you can add or take out courses and videos and contents as needed, you know, depending on your area. So yeah, I would definitely encourage anyone to become a curator and you know, have a look and contact Joyce and People Development if you're interested in doing that for UCD.
Great, thanks, Leitha. And I suppose I was just looking down through the content that you created, and you can see if maybe people might not have caught it, but some of the videos are only 4 minutes long. So you could even do like a really short, you know, taster session for your team of like, you know, 6 videos of 4 minutes. So it doesn't have to be something that's really long, and you know, so it just depends on what you see there, and you can just pull things out. It's a drag and drop almost, and into a collection, and then you can just publish it. So it's really easy.
Yeah, that's right. And this is the allyship and anti-racist. So this is from LinkedIn Learning as opposed to the EDI website. So you can see this video, Be an Ally, is only, you know, less than 5 minutes long, and some of them are a bit longer, and some of them are a bit shorter. So yeah, it's great to be able to tailor content.
Great. Thank you, Leitha. So finally, I'm going to turn to Louise. In your role in Trinity College, Louise, you know, you've had LinkedIn Learning, as I said at the outset there, for a little bit longer than us, nearly 2 years now. So maybe just talk us through what were the key drivers behind introducing LinkedIn Learning to Trinity staff, and maybe some of the types of engagement strategies that you've deployed to increase activity and target learning opportunities across Trinity also, please.
Yes, thank you, Joyce. Thanks for the opportunity to talk to everybody today. In Trinity, we brought it in under our strategic plan and creating a university for the 21st century. That was our primary piece. And also just looking at maximizing the benefit, and you'd said that at the beginning, you know, creating the biggest impact, the largest number of people. So in particular in Trinity, linking the needs and the wants of the individual was really the critical piece. And it didn't take too long to realise that. I think when people initially looked at LinkedIn Learning, they just saw a black hole of everything and couldn't actually find their way through it. And I love the new look and feel is really, really fantastic for staff. It's very intuitive in terms of navigation. So, and I think once you're in there, you're hooked. But you just have to find that hook to get in there. So we started by setting up pre-course entry pieces so that everybody joined a training event at the same level. And I know you already have started on that road. And for example, one of our bigger early successes was we were setting up mentoring partnerships. And we asked both the mentor and the mentee to take part in the Being a Good Mentor or Mentee program, because that's a really lovely one on LinkedIn Learning. And we had 100% uptake of that. So that was a really good indicator to us that people really want it, but they just need to find where to look. So that setting up the career paths or other packages was very important. We also asked departments to set team challenges, so that everyone in the department, for example, would upskill on how to Skype for Business or Excel or whatever package was quite relevant to them. And that was really good, because what happened was departments actually set a time by. So you might be on a Wednesday morning from 9 to 10, everybody goes into LinkedIn and does something. So that was definitely very helpful for people. And it gave that. So some people felt that maybe they couldn't be doing some of the LinkedIn pieces during their working hours, but we felt that it's part of your learning, your ongoing training, and you would go to a face-to-face course in your terms of during your working day. So that making LinkedIn Learning acceptable as part of the working day was really helpful. And that also brought in the piece around the micro learning, where it might only just be a short module, or if you want to know how to do pivot tables, you know, you just go look at that, find it out. One of the things that we didn't realise initially, but there's a lot of courses on there that account for CPD hours, particularly around project management. And so that was a big thing. When we found that out, loads of people started using LinkedIn Learning to keep their professional certificates going and accreditations going. So that was very, very helpful. We also encouraged personal use. And by that I mean, for example, if somebody's going for an interview, there's loads of interesting courses like how to rock it at an interview, or storytelling or presentation skills, or own your voice, or how to crush self-doubt and build confidence. So they were really good. People could go in and they mightn't necessarily want to, you might want to go off and ask, oh, can you give me a bit of a run through of an interview? But seeing it on LinkedIn Learning will really help people without them having to reveal themselves, I suppose. We also linked to our competencies and published a list of competencies and relevant training. And that was really helpful for researchers in particular. And we also linked to more fun activities, try to have an upbeat piece to it. So for example, on a bank holiday weekend, we might publish, here's some really nice things you might want to watch just before the bank holiday weekend, or after the bank holiday, welcome back, here's how to get in the groove again. So, and we also spent quite a bit of time using it as part of our training events. So really to give people that taster and exposure to it. And once again, they start seeing what's available there, it makes it easier to go in and look. And we would use it as part of a toolkit for post-training events. So there's so many different ways that you can use it and people can engage with it. And it's now that people can also publish their certificates of completion to LinkedIn Learning, to their LinkedIn profile. I think that's a really nice piece for people. So we're seeing a little bit more of people doing that now. But we do ask them as well to update their core HR record. So when they print off their training report, that it'll show there. It's a really nice way to store all your records of your training to date. And that gives that extra value to the LinkedIn Learning, that we do view them as legitimate training, and giving that validation to people. So there are some of the ways that we we get that engagement, and we have quite good engagement. So.
That's great, Louise. And you've just actually reminded me there that individuals in UCD can also upload into their info hub. In My Development Workspace, they can pop in any LinkedIn courses that they've done in there as well, so they can keep a record of it. And you know, it's great to see how all of these initiatives, the initiatives that you rolled out. And I suppose in terms of translating that into the scale of activity. So where are you in Trinity? We're about 1,200 users. You know, where are you at the moment?
We are at about 6,000 users now. And in the last 6 months, we would have had 44,000 videos completed, not just watched, but because quite often people dip in and just watch some of it, they're actually completed. And in a 12-month period, we'd had 158,000 videos watched and 3,500 courses completed and certified at the end. So that was actually huge for us. Yes, that was very interesting. I think the last year in particular has brought great engagement with LinkedIn Learning too.
Yes, and I mentioned in UCD, I mentioned we were up to nearly 4,000 courses, but we have that's viewed, not completed. We have about 10% of that are actually completed, so only about 400. But of course, we're still building the bridge to that. And we've had about 11,000 videos completed, so in the last 4.5 months. So we're getting there too. So it's great.
Yes, that's still very good in that period, you know, for a new package. In terms of our user hours, so on average, people were in the last 6 months were viewing 1 hour and 50 minutes of videos. So that's each individual user averaged out. But in the last 12 months, this is quite interesting that it went up to 3 hours viewing. So when you look to the bigger picture, so that's significant for all of those users to be viewing 3 hours of LinkedIn Learning.
About where we think about where we were 12 months ago.
Exactly.
Like nearly to the day, I'd say there was a massive surge in LinkedIn Learning courses and online courses at that point in time for so many people, you know, working from home unexpectedly. So thank you so much, Louise. That was absolutely fantastic, and for your insights and what you've done in Trinity. And I just want to maybe just link back into you, Sarah, there, just around you know, higher education specifically, and maybe the types of skills which are most in demand in higher education. You know, you spoke about top 10 skills, but is there anything there you could share with us?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. We look at the statistics for at, you know, faculty members, for professional staff members, and all of their different areas, and then for students within our universities. You know, there's a step there when we're looking actually at the future of work. I forget the exact number, but I think it was like 35% or so of the future of work will be just condensed to like 15 occupations. Like that's what they're looking at, and it's all very kind of tech related. And so when we're seeing the future of the labor market going in a certain direction, there's certain skills that we want to make sure people are learning that are both a mix of the soft and the hard skills. So if we look at the reason why there's so much emphasis on soft transferable skills is that one's ability, as I mentioned it before, to unlearn and relearn and cope and be resilient through change and be, collaborative and make use of certain tools, that enables them to move forward with progress. And so I think that that's why we're seeing so many of the skills centering on things like resilience and adaptability, obviously digital capabilities, acutely needed as a result of this year, but always, every university has a digital kind of first strategy. They have a digital transformation strategy, and digital literacy is a core component of that for staff, academics, professional staff members, and students. And so that is up there with like number one or number two, but that ability to bring the very human skills that we can to our roles to progress, to learn, I think are why we're seeing them come up on that list, which would be things like emotional intelligence, cross-functional collaboration, leading through change, time management, dealing with stress effectively. Because if you're crippled by those, your inability to be proficient at your job and learn additional skill sets, you already have a barrier. And so there's some foundational skills you need. On the student side of things, although I know you don't have it for students, but I know some of your research area does, there's obviously a heavy emphasis on things like, SPSS and statistic tools and all this data analysis goodness. Huge actual focus, number 1 and 2 of the skills on that side tend to be Excel and Python. So it's really interesting. We're seeing a massive surge of individuals learning Python across disciplines. So people that are not necessarily studying that discipline, learning and leaning into that skill set. Now, we have some tools, and I can share this in the follow-up, that if this is intrigued anyone's, piqued anyone's curiosity, we do have some tools online, that are free tools that we've built with like the World Economic Forum and others, where you can see by business area that you might identify with what are those key skills. So I'll link that, I'll send it to Joyce, and then anyone that wants to dig in can, but then they also layer in, and here are the LinkedIn Learning courses that match up to those skills. So once you are aware, you can then dig in and actually go and learn those skills or promote those skills with your team.
Great, thanks, Sarah. I'll be happy to share that information with the community. Are there any questions there in the chat for us, Emer?
So there was just a comment from Rosemary Thomas saying it would be nice to have something recommended for postdocs too, apart from the postdoc training via the postdoc centre at UCD.
I do see there, I'm just sharing my screen, that Leisha just put up we do have full LinkedIn Learning paths for each of the 4 areas, the 4 pillars within the research career framework. So they're here, and you can just go straight to those. So research and research management, if you click on that, it'll just bring you straight into to that learning path there for those skill sets. So it's just taking a second there, but that will bring you in there. So that's on the chat, and there's the type of courses in that collection that you can access. Okay.
Great, and I can just see there's another question coming in there from Bianca Shaw. She's asked if there are any recommendations on how to start with LinkedIn. It can be so overwhelming as there's so much content, so any advice on that?
Yeah, and this is what I think Louise alluded to as well, just around, there's so much on there. I mean, if you're looking for a starting point, I would say that the People Development website, if you look a little bit further down on our LinkedIn page, we have curated pathways for each of the core competencies in UCD on the professional job families framework. So that's a good starting point, because it's collections around planning and organization, building relationships, communication. So they're the core baseline ones that we would look at, which then complement our facilitator-led training. So if you're looking for somewhere to start, that would be probably a good place to start, and that's on the People Development website and the LinkedIn Learning. I think we circulated around the link, or going to circulate around the link to our webpage. And that can be, you can access them just by scrolling down a little bit. You'll see those all there.
Brilliant. And I will be posting all these links in the currents afterwards as well. So I'll make sure that everyone gets a chance to see these, even if this is if they're watching the recording as well. So brilliant. If anyone does have any questions, you don't have to type it in the chat. You can actually unmute yourself if you'd like and speak up. You're more than welcome to do so. We'll pop them in the chat.
And I know, Emer, that you had put in the people development email, just if somebody does want to create content. And of course, it's not like we follow up. We basically just give you the access to be a content creator, and you watch your video, and then you can just go ahead and create content for your own team. And if you need anything, you can come back to us. So it's not like, you know, there's meetings to go to, or there's a quarterly event or any of that. It's just, you just go and just do it yourself, and off you go. So it's very light touch from my perspective, but happy to assist anybody that we can.
Brilliant. So any more questions for this session? Might be finishing up a little bit early then if there's none, but yeah, as Joyce said, I've left the email address for them in the chat. I'm going to link everything into currents, and I've posted a bit on our Twitter page as well if anyone wants to take a look at that. That's UCD Work Smart. And Sarah there has just posted in the most popular courses of the year there. Thanks a million for that, Sarah. So I'll be sure to include all that in the roundup afterwards. Bianca saying thanks very much. If there aren't any more questions, that we might round it off there. And that is the last session for today as well for Work Smart Together, the